sketchyGOichie.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of sketchyGOichie. I am the humblest of hosts, your host, Roger Andrews, illustrator, graphic designer, and I wanted to jump right into this one. This is a sort of a t-shirt design done for fun. Like I tried to do sort of a study of these characters. If you've seen in the intro, Joker getting a haircut by Batman in a barber's chair, and I thought it'd be a fun kind of just for the heck of it, fun kind of t-shirt design. So I decided to do this little sketch, and I wanted this video to be a little less about the technique and a little more about philosophy, especially as it relates to art. And the way I see it, art, as it is in life, is about choices, and every single given piece that you work on is about choices and how you sort of take those choices and make them the most beneficial to the art itself. Everything is in service of the final piece. And as you can see here in the sketch stage on this Joker, the guy sitting in the foreground here, it's all choices. It's all about which style I wanted to render him in. It's about his proportions, about how big his head's going to be, the shape of his eyes. Even as I sort of render in Batman there in the background, his arch nemesis, it's about choosing his expression. It's about how far back to tuck him behind the Joker. You know, how much of him I need to reveal to be able to, for the viewer to be able to even recognize that it's Batman back there behind him. So there's visual cues that I have to kind of make sure that are present. You know, the flowing cape and the cowl with the bat ears. And I thought to further emphasize it, I'd throw that his chest icon, that bat icon that you see on the bat signal. I thought it'd be wise to throw it in there, and I'm sort of playing around with that arm and that sort of those little flares that come off of his forearm, just so you can kind of see them, and they come, they go, and you can see the sketching stage for me, and probably for most of you guys, is just an exploration. It's kind of an expedition in the piece, and I'm going through that and making, yes, choices. You know, how big his head's going to be, how much of that cape you're going to see off to the right, so that way it sort of balances the image off. I even put little clippings of Joker hair, which is going to, you know, which in theory would be green once I go to the color stage, you know. And I'm playing around here with the position of his eyes, Batman's eyes behind the Joker. So as I zoom in here, you know, again, let me get into the philosophy of it. So choices, as it relates to art, as I said earlier, it's about life. And by that I mean, just take, for example, you know, there are people in this world who presumably have every gift imaginable. You could be born, you know, tall, really physically fit, very smart, well-spoken, talented, all of those things. And you don't really, you see those folks in life and you're like, some are incredibly successful and some seem to kind of meander through life, and maybe they don't take it as serious, or perhaps, you know, they make some choices that are unwise or less advisable. Conversely, if you take some folks who, you know, for whatever reason haven't gotten all the best deck of cards or best hand in a deck of cards dealt to them, and, you know, and it could be a myriad of things, you know, mental and physical, and for some reason those folks are able to overcome any sort of obstacles and become highly successful. And success is relative, of course, but the common denominator for both circumstances, whether they be positive or negative, whether you have gifts or not, whether you're a person who's an incredibly hard worker or someone who's got to be prodded into getting the job done, the common denominator for all of it is choice. And the way I see it, the way it relates to art is anytime I open up a document or I select a sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, and a decision is made, it may not be necessarily the final decision. As you can see in the earlier stages, or even here in the inking stages, a lot of the choices are being made on the fly. And of course, a lot of that is a product of, study and a lot of hard work, especially when it comes to, practicing and the study is, for me is, just the absorption of, other artists that I admire, or just pop culture, or, I grew up watching cartoons, so obviously there's, some of that is kind of baked into my DNA. But the same goes for you, for anyone out there who's rendering. It's a choice you make, what you choose to do with your time, and and how those influences affect you, sort of have a weight, and they have a bearing on the choices you make. And so for me in art, and for any artist, if you choose a particular style, and in this case this sort of cartoony style, it is completely, obviously it's your own, because only you can exist in your own skin, but how you choose to make those choices manifest is really, to me, the most interesting aspect of having that ability to make artistic choices. It's how you choose to render, and how you choose to what technique you choose to use, and in terms of if you have a painterly style, or if you have a more of a graphic sort of cartoony style, or if you have a more textured line or a more smooth line. It's all in those influences that you choose to take in, and ultimately how you make those choices manifest. So I say all that just to say that this piece, again, it's just done for fun. I mean, there's really no there's really no agenda. I mean, ideally the plan was to make it'd be kind of cool if how would this look on a t-shirt. So in that, it kind of forms the decisions that I make along the way, particularly with the clarity of the line, because if this is going to be screen printed, some of you may not know, but the line has to be, there's a certain level of thickness that the line needs to have in order to allow it to make for a proper screen. So when it's printed on the t-shirt, a lot of the detail won't get lost. And even on this piece, I made some mistakes in terms of some areas where the lines are really, really fine. And there's a point in the inking process where I go back in and I thicken certain areas of the lines just to make it a little more camera ready, would be the only way I could describe it. And at this stage, I'm making decisions in terms of what areas are going to be blocked in, what color areas are going to be blocked in. I also should note, in traditional screen printing, most cases 6 colors are your maximum. So here I'm trying to make the decision that I'm going to have this on a black t-shirt, so I'm going to use the black of the t-shirt to be the black of the art. So I sort of have to go in and sort of render this in such a way that the black is the line art is essentially the shirt. It's going to come through, so I won't even need the black layer, which would allow me to have, instead of using one of the 6 blacks on black, one of the 6 colors available on black, I'd allow the t-shirt to kind of come through and form the line art. And here I'm kind of monkeying around with different textures. And if you notice in the upper left hand corner there's a color chart that was provided by a printer. My brother Kyle, he has a G&G screen printing out of Plymouth, highly successful, well-respected screen printer. I mean, they do everything in that area. I mean, probably just about everyone wearing a printed or embroidered image is probably done by G&G silk screening out of Plymouth, Massachusetts. But anyways, Kyle had his artist Ross his graphic designer, his staff graphic designer, send over a color chart, and that was me sort of using the color picker. I was literally just selecting colors from that sort of selection of colors to generate this image. And at this point, I'm just sort of doing some experimenting. Clearly, I have the line art layer, so it's allowing me to sort of fill those sections with different colors. And here I'm playing with, I'm making edits to, how much of the black, where the black shadow of the Joker's hair meets the black of the symbol, the bat symbol in the background. There has to be some level of separation there, otherwise it would blend in. However, I did want it to blend in. I thought it would be a kind of a cool effect if it did, where his hair sort of, there's only little highlights that right there, like that green on the top that separate it, and the little green there and that flare on the side of his head separates it from the bat symbol, the blackness of the bat symbol. I thought it was kind of cool. And of course, with the limitation of 6 colors, right here I'm really trying to experiment. How can I limit this image to just the 6? And at this point, white is one of them, blue would be one, yellow would be one, so that's 3 already, and then green, that would be a 4th. And I'm really sort of trying to decide, all right, what colors are going to go where. At that point I would only have 2 more colors, and I was like, well, obviously I need to have the gray of Batman, so that's your 5th. So I'm trying to figure out, all right, so maybe if I use halftones. So here's where I started to kind of go down this path of using halftones. I don't know that I ever got successful at it, but I was trying to figure out a way to use sort of halftone dots. That's just that pattern of dots, and pick one of the existing colors, like red, for example. And I was going to use those halftone dots to kind of fill in the shapes, and basically be able to take sort of the red of the lips of the Joker, and on that same screen use halftones in that same color red, just put dots, sort of, so that you have a series of dots in the same exact color, which wouldn't require me to use a flesh tone for example, for Batman's, the little face that you see revealed, the little bit of leftover face there on his mask. And you can see even in the background, I used, I think it was the white, I used halftone dots to kind of form where Batman's body would be, the sort of his legs and chest area, the only little bit of it that gets revealed. And then I noticed, of course, you needed an outer outline, a white outline to contain the entire shape. So obviously that white outline would be on the same layer. Of course, would be on the same layer as the white of his face and the cowl, excuse me, and the cowl and the clipper head and the eyes. That was the only way I could feel like it would sort of bind the entire shape together. So this stage of the process is pure experimentation. You can see me using some little white highlight dots in the hair. There's an errant one. I was playing around with introducing white highlights on other sections of the piece. In his cape, a little bit of white highlights on the top of Batman's head, and then I was playing around with other color dots, like there's some green halftone dots that are getting used on the Joker's, just like over his eyes, and this little shadow on the side of his head. I wanted to kind of separate the Joker's white head from the Batman face, just to kind of give it a little bit of definition. But as you can see here, I mean, this is super, super graphic, and I'm sort of, because I'm limited in colors, I'm trying to be experimental. I'm trying to make choices on how I can best render this. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what, let me just go crazy. So I was like, all right, so that, clearly that none of that was working. So I decided to let me throw a binding shape around everything in a single color, and then that sort of, I want to create a monochromatic, this series of brown tones, kind of like the way I like to render ultimately, to be honest with you, is limited color palette, sort of a mid-tone, and then a highlight. So I thought, wow, that might be kind of fun if I could kind of render this in such a way that is really only like 2 or 3 colors in reality. And to be honest with you, this one is really only 3. It's that sort of darker brown, that lighter brown, and the white. And I was trying to play with a way that would make it really graphic. And you can kind of see there are some dots in there. Those dots are literally just, they're halftone dots in the brown. And all it is just, I just sort of carve those dots. I would just cut those dots out of the background of the brown shape, which would allow the tan. And then at this stage, I'm like, you know what? All right, so maybe the monochromatic's not working. Let me bring back the multicolor and see if I can so I didn't give up, I guess is where I'm getting to on this one. So let me give it a cleaner, sharper outer outline. A more finalized one, because the one I had put in there was just kind of a placeholder. And at this stage, I was like, let me give it a really clean, super sharp outer outline. Dense. It was actually suggested by Mark over at Flawless Cuts in Fall River. He and I and Alex and Tony over at Flawless were coming up with ideas, and this was one of them. I think those guys came up with, and so I chose to kind of render from. So I was presenting these images over to the guys, and they were making a series of suggestions. And one of them was to really kind of, nobody, including myself, was really feeling this halftone treatment. So I was just trying to figure out ways to make it the most interesting. So I'm playing with different patterns. As you can see, there's a little plaid that kind of made an appearance on the Joker's that apron. That apron. Then I put some lines in, and so here I just scrapped all of that. By the way, I didn't throw it away. By the way, I should mention this is all done in Procreate on the iPad. So everything that you had seen before was all on different layers. So I had several layers, probably 13, 14, 15 layers of different textures and halftones and all that good stuff. But at this stage, I scrapped all of that. I think it was either Mark's or Alex's suggestion through a group text to kind of just render it how I would render it any other way. Give myself no color limitations at all. Render it like it was a regular piece. So here's where I go in, and I'm literally doing the traditional approach that I've shared with you guys in many, many other videos. And I just started flatting in all these individual colors with no sort of limitation to the 6 color that would happen. All right, so I zoom in here so you can kind of see. All right, so I flatted in all the colors, and now I'm in the process of just making decisions on how I'm going to handle shadowing. Shadowing is tricky, guys. I should mention, if you're going to be doing screen print, shadowing it takes a lot of forethought, and I don't have a ton of experience, believe it or not, in doing graphic t-shirts. I mean, I've done simple graphic t-shirts. By that I mean either line art filled in by 1 through 6 extra colors, or 1 through 5 extra colors, or no line art at all, where it's just it's just color on, again, those 6 colors on a printed tee. So I was basically at this point, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to render this how I render it. I'm going to put shadows where I would normally put shadows, and I'm just going to figure it out how I'm going to make this a successful printable piece of art on a t-shirt. Now, there are digital ways to print, and as a matter of fact, my brother Kyle over at G&G Silkscreen, he suggested perhaps, because at some point I sent this over to him just to see, can this be, if I wanted to print this, or if I was commissioned to print this, what could I do? I was on a mission at this point, and he suggested there's a digital way, sort of a direct transfer way of doing it. Now, if anybody would like to leave comments about a place that does a really durable, long-term solution for digital printing on a t-shirt, I'd love to hear it, because those direct transfers seem to me to be a bit on the flimsy side. Maybe they capture all the colors and the shading, but so I did all those colors, I did all that shading, and now I'm at the stage here where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna break this down into a printable piece. And clearly the way I rendered that thing in color, there's no way. I mean, it's probably like 10 colors, if you include all the shading. So now I'm breaking it down to its lowest compounds. I'm doing like I did earlier. I'm eliminating the black line art and allowing the t-shirt to be the color of black to show through. And I'm finally getting to a stage where I'm like, all right, well, I'm putting the shadows on their own layer, creating one. I'm putting the midtones on its own layer, creating two, and then the white, creating three. And then I may even at the end, I think I retain the black line art and use that as a fourth color. So these are in black and gray right now, but the reality is they're all gonna get printed in a single color, like a blue. If this was to get printed, it would be like a single color blue, like a deep tone, and then a lighter tone, sort of like a lighter blue, the white, and then probably stamp it home with that black line art on top. But anyways, here it is, all in color. Hope you enjoyed this little study. sketchyGOichie. Remember, make great choices. Live your moment. Happy sketching, y'all. Peace.